Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're at the pretty village of West Knighton in Dorset. It's located about 3 miles southeast of Dorchester, and we're going to be walking a roughly 6.5 mile circular route. We'll look at a few things at West Knighton before heading north to West Stafford. We'll follow the River Frome west to the outskirts of Dorchester, passing by Max Gate, once the home of author and poet Thomas Hardy, and then head back south through Winterborne Came and Whitcombe before returning to the village here. And I expect we'll see lots of interesting things along the way. Now I'm filming at the end of August. The sun is out, fair bit of blue sky, but there is a lot of cloud as well, so we should be okay today. Should be perfect conditions for walking. Do come along with us. Well, I've parked my car in the centre of the village and we'll start off with a little wander around. And what better place to begin with the church, which is just in front of me here. And it's the Church of St. Peter. Now originally there was a church here in the 12th century, but only the east wall and part of the north wall of the nave remained from that building. The chancel was rebuilt in the 13th century when the nave was lengthened and the south aisle added and lower part of the west tower built. The north porch was added in the 14th century, and in the 16th century part of the south aisle was converted to become the south chapel. There was a big restoration in 1893 when the vestry was added. I think it's got one bell. And I was reading that Thomas Hardy actually supervised the 19th century restoration. Unfortunately it's closed, so we can't pop inside today. Now as far as the name West Knighton is concerned, it was recorded in the Domesday Book as Chenistone or Kenistone. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. It means place of the thanes, which derive from knit and ton, Anglo-Saxon for farmstead of young men or retainers. And I think the word knit or knight is where the word knight comes from. Just making my way northwards through the village. This building here used to be the village school, built in 1865, now a private house. And this is the new inn, originally an 18th century farm cottage. I expect it could well be our final destination. Well, West Knighton's quite a small little village, but very pretty nonetheless. Okay, we're now going to head out into the countryside, initially heading northwards. Well, our first view of the day, and look at these gorgeous sunflowers, looking quite jolly in the morning sunshine. And blimey, look in the field, is that a whole load of Canadian geese just taking off. Beautiful sight. Now today is Sunday, it's the Sunday of the August bank holiday weekend, so I expect we might see some other folk out and about today. We might not have this walk all to ourselves. There was also quite a bit of rain last night, but at the moment the ground conditions look okay. Another little pit stop as we're continuing to head northwards. This is looking over to the west. A real mixture of colours now. Obviously you've got the green of some of the grass, but some of the fields now that sort of golden brown colour with the crops having been harvested. Well, of course, this is Logan's favourite time of the year with blackberries. Now, I'm not sure about these. I mean, okay, they're black, but they're quite hard. I don't know. I'm not sure if these are going to pass the quality testing process. He's not sure. Can I have that one? Oh, just about. This is looking over to the east. Just seen a lovely roe deer run across the field. I didn't get enough time to get my Canon camera out, unfortunately. And then the very far distance, I wonder if that's the forest that we walked through when we went to see Hardy's cottage at Higher Bockhampton. Well, we've reached a place called Sixpenny Gate, and here we head westwards to Stafford Farm before heading north again. There's a lovely crop of maize on the left-hand side there as well. So this is Stafford Farm, and the footpath that I want is just over there. So we'll follow that, and that should take us eventually to a railway line. Oh wow, what a beautiful view. So this is, well, we seem to be, we're up on a ridge at the moment. So this is looking to the north, and over there is the outskirts of Dorchester, and a little bit further on you can see Poundbury. And then of course you've got this glorious Dorset rolling countryside. I've got to point out these gates. The first section of the walk has had a lot of these beautifully well maintained metal gates, all painted green, some of them quite ornate. Well, this is the railway line that I was looking for. Of course we go under it. The actual line itself was opened in 1847. The next station to the west, of course, is Dorchester South. I think the next one to the east is Morton. What an idyllic little river. I think this might still be the South Winterborne, although it does join the River Frome somewhere around here. Either that or it is part of the River Frome. But the Winterborne rises at springs in the west at Winterborne Abbas and flows past quite a few settlements that are actually prefixed with the word Winterborne. So we're now coming into West Stafford, originally called Stanford, I believe, and it derives from Old English for stony ford. Of course, you've got the South Winterborne. There would have been a ford crossing that. And this is our second church of the walk, St Andrew's Church at West Stafford. Now, the west end of the nave is the only bit that remains from its 15th century predecessor. The tower was rebuilt in the early 16th century, and in 1640 the nave and chancel was rebuilt and the south porch added. The present chancel was added in 1898. I think it's got 3 bells. And of course West Stafford was the location of Hardy's story The Waiting Supper, and he based the church on the setting for Tess and Angel Clare's marriage in Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Now, Sir Frederick Treves, in his 1906 book Highways and Byways in Dorset, described the village as, and I quote, "a lovely village with a church and rectory good to see," which was uncharacteristically polite and unusually brief for him. Mind you, he was getting near to the end of the book when he wrote it. Well, at this point in the walk, say we start heading westwards towards the outskirts of Dorchester. There's a little bit of a wind blowing up now. Well, we're continuing to head westwards, past another field of maize, just past a sign that said Dorchester 2 miles, so definitely going in the right direction, although we won't be going right into the centre of Dorchester. And we're actually on part of the Hardy Way, which is that 220-mile long distance path that winds its way through Dorset, linking places that have got a connection with Thomas Hardy. And it starts at Higher Bockhampton, where he was born, and ends at Stinsford Churchyard, where his heart is buried. Well folks, Logan and I have done something like 270, 280 video walks together. It has never rained once. There was no rain forecast today. We haven't got any rainwear. It's raining. I'm kind of hoping it's only short term. Well, I'm pleased to say that passing shower has passed. We should be okay now for the rest of the walk, hopefully. Now the next section of the walk we're going to walk through quite quickly because it's not that pretty. We're just by the recycling centre and the sewage works on the outskirts of Dorchester, but we need to pass through there to get to our next destination. Well, this is as far west as we go on the walk, and in front of me here you can see that's the flyover, that's the Dorchester bypass. And then just a little bit further to the north, there's the River Frome. Okay, we now need to start heading southwards towards Max Gate. Well, looks like we've got to cross the railway line again. This time we've got to go across it rather than underneath. Now this delightful building that we can see just over the wall here is Max Gate. The house was designed in Queen Anne style by Thomas Hardy and built by his father and brother for him in 1885 on about 1.5 acres of land that Hardy had bought a couple of years earlier. It was expanded in 1895 and well, he lived here until his death in 1928. And whilst he was here, he wrote quite a few novels and poems, The Woodlanders, Tess of the d'Urbervilles, and the Dynasts, among others. And he entertained Edward VIII, Lawrence of Arabia, Rudyard Kipling, H.G. Wells, and Robert Louis Stevenson. The house has been owned by the National Trust since 1940. It was given to them on the condition that someone always lived in it. It's open to the public, has been since 1994. It gets its name, Max Gate. Well, it was named as a pun on the name of a nearby toll house, Max Gate, M-A-C-K. It was held by the toll gatekeeper Henry Mack. A 1900 map has it as Max Gate, but the building there is long gone. Well, we've now left Max Gate and we're heading away from Dorchester southwards, just past a signpost that shows our next destination, Winterborne Came. Just before we go over the top of this ridge, just looking back to the north, beautiful views here. In fact, over to the west there, I can just about see the Hardy Monument in the far distance. Of course, we've been there in the past. And then top of the hill there's Poundbury, King Charles's vision. Well, we're just coming into the little settlement of Winterborne Came. It gets its name from, well, the Winterborne bit, from the Winterborne, which is just by me here, and there it is, the South Winterborne that we saw a little bit earlier on in the walk. The Came bit comes from, well, Caen in France, as once the settlement was owned by the Abbey of St Etienne in Caen that was dedicated to St Stephen. There was a much larger settlement here in the past, and indeed over to the west there are remains of the deserted village of Winterborne Farringdon. Of course, so many little villages declined or became deserted in the 14th and 15th and even 16th centuries, either through plague or changes in farming practices, as more land was turned over to large-scale sheep farming, meaning folk needed to find work elsewhere. Well, this is a bit disappointing. I was hoping to show you the church at Winterborne Came and at least have a peek from a distance of Came House, but both seem to be on private land, inaccessible to the public and well hidden behind trees. So, well, let me tell you a little bit about them anyway. Well, the church is the Church of St Peter. The nave was built in the 14th century. The chancel was rebuilt and made wider in the 15th century when the west tower was added, and the north porch added in the 17th century. But it became redundant and has been run by the church's Conservation Trust since 1989. Now, a chap called William Barnes was the rector here in the 19th century. As well as being a priest, he was an inventor and poet. He wrote over 800 poems, many written in the Dorset dialect. Anyway, he's buried in the churchyard. And Thomas Hardy was a long-time friend of Barnes, and as he walked across fields to attend the funeral of Barnes, he noticed the sun shining on the coffin, and that actually inspired him to write his poem The Last Signal, which was published in 1886. And Came House, near the church, was built in 1754 in a Palladian style, in a park that covers something like 230 acres. Well, we now need to start heading eastwards, and we're going to join an old friend of ours, the Jubilee Trail, that 90-mile long-distance path that goes from Ford Abbey in Somerset all the way to Bockley Dyke on the Dorset-Hampshire border. And it was established in 1995 to commemorate 60 years of the Ramblers Association. Oh, goodness me. Well, this footpath, which is the Jubilee Trail, crosses a field of maize, and you can see the footpath down below, but it's quite a challenge. The trouble is you can't really go either side of it because it would take you too much of a detour. But we're just about getting through. Whew. We made it through that field of maize. I say the footpath was there, it was just fairly well overgrown. Right, we're just about to approach the little settlement of Whitcombe, and we've got to be careful because we've got to cross quite a busy road. And this is Whitcombe, originally recorded as Widecombe, with a land measurement of 2 hides. King Athelstan gave it to Milton Abbey in the 10th century, and they owned it right up until the dissolution of monasteries, after which it went back to the king until he passed it on. But it's another village that declined. There was evidence of a deserted bit to the east where there were once 15 houses that stood over something like 14 acres. But now there's just the church and an old farm now called Whitcombe Manor, which was rebuilt in the 19th century. But there's still a 17th century barn there, and there are a few other houses here as well. Oh, what a delightful church. The church at Whitcombe. It doesn't have a dedication, probably because, well, it was originally regarded as an addition to Milton Abbey and was served by one of the monks. The nave was built in the 12th century on the site of an earlier Saxon church and refaced in the 15th century. The chancel and south porch were built in the 15th century and the west tower added in 1596. The south side of the nave was then reconstructed in the 18th century. I think it's got 2 bells, but it was declared redundant in 1971 and is looked after these days by the church's Conservation Trust. Well, we'll have a quick peep inside, and it's very light in here. So over there, that's the font, which I believe dates from 1300. And there's the pulpit. Now, of course, I mentioned Reverend William Barnes earlier on. He was the rector at Winterborne Came. Well, he was also the rector here, and the pulpit has been left exactly as it was when Barnes gave his last ever sermon here in 1886. And apparently he'd given his first sermon in the same pulpit in 1847. And just where that sort of blocked off north door is, I think those are the remains of a couple of Saxon crosses from the previous church. I don't know if you can make out this painting on the wall. I believe it's representing St. Christopher. And this is towards the chancel end. No stained glass windows, but still very pretty and so well looked after by the church's Conservation Trust. Well, just a little heads up for any folk that might be doing this walk after seeing the video. The footpath away from Whitcombe follows the side of this field. On the other side of the fence, you can see there's not a lot of room and it's fairly overgrown. Not impassable though. Well, we're very much on the homeward leg now. We've left Whitcombe. What a lovely church that was. And we're heading eastwards back to West Knighton, where hopefully the pub is one of those that's open in the afternoon. Fingers crossed. The welcome site of the new inn, which of course we will now have to visit purely for research purposes for the video, of course. Well folks, here we are in the beer garden of the new inn. Quite a wind now, but we can test out their ale. Thumbs up from me. And not pipers, but real hand-cooked sea salt. What we're going to think about? Yeah. It all goes down the same way. We hope you enjoyed our walk today. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment. And do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. We always put copies of the route there. So until we meet again, thanks for watching and cheerio.